Hey guys, some weaker, so I'm free. Truly independent.
Crazy times in television land. Hello, I'm television and radio producer, presenter Rob McKnight. With over 30 years experience, this is indeed Meeting McKnight. And what a week it's been for Karl Stefanovic in Channel 9. The Golden Boy has been unceremoniously fired and is now free to focus on his burgeoning podcast career. Now, you might remember I went live with the breaking news last week on McKnight Tonight. Karl Stefanovic has been sensationally fired by Channel 9, according to sources, and 9 is refusing to deny the story when I put the claim to them directly. It took 9 and Karl a few days to sort out the details, but they finally confirmed the reporting. I've shared my thoughts about this on McKnight Tonight, TV news bulletins, podcasts, radio and television shows, so you don't need me to repeat it here. But whatever you think of the people Karl interviews and how he does it, he certainly is building an audience, having hit over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. But will he eventually make enough to match his previous income at 9? Oh, probably not. But he has done what he needed to do, knowing 9 was not going to renew his contract beyond this year. In fact, they admitted as much in their very short press release announcing his departure. 9 Entertainment and Karl Stefanovic have agreed that it is no longer possible for him to continue hosting Today at the same time as his independent podcast. While Karl and 9 had previously agreed he would leave Today at the end of this year, they have subsequently decided he will leave the network immediately. Now, this is the thing that gets me. That is all he gets after being one of the biggest stars in recent times on the network. And 9 hasn't actually said why he couldn't continue. Was it because of the content? Was it because of the way he conducted the interviews? Or was it because of the financial risk after the Mad Witches said they were launching a Cancel Karl campaign? In my opinion, that was probably the final straw. In these tough times, TV networks can't afford a revenue downturn because of an anti-Karl campaign. But Channel 9 has not clearly explained why. In an email to staff, 9 News boss Fiona Deer said, "Protecting freedom of speech is at the core of 9 News and current affairs. We have a rich history of interviewing controversial figures, and journalists have an obligation to ask difficult questions. Part of what makes us tick is trying to understand why people are the way they are, or think the way they think. We welcome open debate and challenging norms with constructive, balanced arguments. As journalists, we play a critical role in society to question, challenge, and hold people to account, regardless of where they come from or which political party or views they represent. I'm acutely aware how challenging this has been, particularly for our Today Show team. If you need any support, myself and my leadership team are here for you." So 9 is saying they protect free speech. In fact, that email almost sounded like it was supporting Karl. But of course, he got the sack. So the points in that email don't back up the actions. So why did they sack him? Was it for doing the interview? Was it because he didn't ask difficult questions? Again, there's been no clear statement. And what does Karl's sacking mean for Channel 9 and the Today Show? Many people have asked me who I think will replace Karl, and I've got to tell you, I have absolutely no idea. Unlike Sunrise, Today never seems to have a succession plan in place. Also, could producers use this opportunity to reformat the show and have a distinct point of difference with Sunrise? The show needs something. Today languishes behind the Channel 7 breakfast show. It is embarrassing how far it is behind. On Monday this week, Sunrise averaged 458,000. Now compare that to today's 265,000. Now, in fairness, Today has been closer to 300,000, so maybe there has been a Karl switch off. Well, that's even more problematic. So the one guy that kept your ratings, I was going to say even half decent, but they weren't, it's now gone and your ratings are going down. You're even close to ABC News Breakfast. And those figures, 265,000, that was closer to what the breakfast shows used to get when we were only counting 5 city metro. Such a pounding they're getting. And back in 2019, I published an article on the TV Black Box website with some ideas of a format change. Now, some critics had a go at me and said, "Oh, it's very similar to what I did with Studio 10. Guess what? They're right. That's because the format I devised for the Channel 10 morning show, it connected with viewers in a different way to the other breakfast and morning shows. Look, I'll add a link in the description of this video so you can read it, the whole thing for yourself. But as far as I'm concerned, the ideas in that document still hold strong. It's just sitting there for the producers of the Today Show to pick and choose from. But that would require a leap of faith and a belief in doing something different. The question is whether anyone in the television industry at the moment is capable of having big ideas and mixing things up, rather than just plodding along doing the same old, and expecting a different outcome. Today has a chance. Today has a moment. But here's what's going to happen. Jane has a party, will go in, filling in for Sarah. It'll be more of the same. They'll go young. They'll think we have to connect with a younger audience, so we'll get a younger person in. But will it work? Karl was 50 and he connected with viewers, and audience loved, liked, hated him. You do need polarizing figures to stand out. That's why Koshi worked so well on Sunrise. He polarized the audience. Now, Matt Shevington doesn't polarize the audience. That probably does. But the thing is, Sunrise doesn't have to do anything. Today is the chaser. I believe Sunrise is beatable. But you need producers who are willing to take a chance and not just be mates with everyone, and actually get out there, roll your sleeves up and do it differently. Think outside the square. Otherwise, it's just more of the same. You won't get headlines. It'll be boring. You'll rate just well enough to maybe cover your costs and keep the show going. But in all honesty, you're just coasting on fumes. Channel 7 is said to be one reality TV show short next year, with word Anthony Patelli's My Reno Rules won't return for season 2 in the short term. As I revealed in the Daily Mail's Inside Mail column on Thursday, Portelli has missed his window to have the show made in time to air before the block, and 7 won't air it after. While ratings were good for the renovation series, the biggest draw card for 7 was the fact Portelli paid for the entire thing, certainly helping the network in these troubled financial times. What's also unclear is Portelli's commitment to another season. Media McKnight understands he has not said whether he would fund the show again. Without his money, there is no show. 7 hasn't ruled out teaming up with Portelli for a second season, but I'm told there's no way it would be able to air before 2028. Remember when commercials suddenly started popping up on Amazon Prime Video? Consumers weren't given a choice. It became the default option unless you decided to upgrade to a new premium package. Well, the news made headlines around the world at the time because, unlike other streaming companies, Amazon didn't offer a lower price for the commercial offering. Now the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission has entered the fray, taking the company to court for allegedly using unfair contract terms. According to the statement released today, between November 2023 and August 2025, Amazon AU's Prime contracts with more than 1 million annual subscribers contained what the ACCC alleges were 5 unfair contract terms that allowed it to unilaterally make negative changes during the contract period without offering subscribers a remedy. It also alleged that Amazon AU later relied on one or more of these unfair terms when it introduced ads to Prime Video in Australia in July 2024. Prior to that, Amazon Prime Video was mainly ad-free. After July 2024, subscribers who wanted to maintain ad-free streaming had to pay an additional $2.99 per month. This was despite annual subscribers already having paid $79 up front for the service. The ACCC is seeking declarations, penalties, consumer redress costs, and other orders. This case is one of the first contested matters taken to the ACCC that falls under the new penalty regime for unfair contract terms, which applies to contracts made or renewed from 9th of November 2023. You know, I guess these companies can change their terms, but if you've already paid the upfront fee of $79, there's no way you should have been charged more. That slipped through my fingers at the time. I didn't realise. So this will be interesting. It seems like the ACCC might have a case. You can show your support for the show by buying me a coffee. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/McKnight tonight. Every bit helps keep this show from our garage going. Just the other week, I was making the case for the casting of stars in local musical productions. It came off the back of Beetlejuice, the musical's national tour, being cancelled at the end of its Brisbane run. Have a look at what I said about the story and the success of Waitress, starring Nat Bass. That musical had come under fire for stunt casting. But my point was stunt casting is needed to make people part with their money. It's really simple. People in the theatre can't complain if big names are used to sell tickets. It is so tough out there. And if you want jobs, if you want there to be a theatre industry, stop whinging, stop moaning when someone like Nat Bass, who's had an extraordinary theatre career, gets picked to be the lead of a role. She gets people through the doors. So why complain about it? Otherwise, you're bound to end up with a fate like Beetlejuice, which, as far as I can tell, had no big names, or certainly no names that I recognised. And I'm just a pleb. So, if people like me aren't recognising the names and aren't drawn to it because there's no one we specifically want to see, well, then you've got problems and you end up with cancellations. Well, it turns out I was wrong, because not even the star power of Nat Bass and Rob Mills could save the show. With news, Waitress will finish up before its planned move to Sydney. Producers have blamed cost of living pressures and economic uncertainty for soft ticket sales. And yes, people were getting in contact with me, really happy that I was wrong about something, but I stand by it. I still think Nat Bass and Rob Mills gave consumers the best choice and names to go to part with their money in a cost of living crisis. And so maybe it lasted longer than it would have. I don't know. I can't definitively say that. But my point is the theatre community needs to make sure it's not turning on itself when these choices are made for commercial reasons. Yeah, it didn't work out, so you can say I'm wrong, but maybe the show held on longer than it might have. I don't know. But at the moment, it's hard for local productions, musicals, and unless you're a Hamilton or something that has become the biggest thing in the world, it's going to be tough and remain tough. Now, you might have noticed microdramas appearing on your social media feed. These are short-form, serialized content, usually requiring a subscription. But at a time when YouTube wants longer content, is there a market for microdramas? Dan Barrett had some thoughts on this in a recent edition of his Always Be Watching newsletter, so I thought I'd get him here to share his thoughts with us. Dan, welcome to Media McKnight.
Yeah, hi. You said in your intro there that people may have seen it in their social media feeds, but my contention is I don't think that many people are seeing microdramas in their media feeds. But you tell me, are you seeing this much in your social media?
Yeah, I am. I'm seeing, well, one actually got me in, I will be honest, and I did sign up. I didn't pay a subscription, but I got bored with it really quickly. So
What platform?
I can't remember if it was Instagram or TikTok, but I kept seeing clips for a drama. It was about it was about a Merlin type character in the
Yeah.
Middle Ages. And it just actually started getting me in. So I thought, oh, check this out. But I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that it came to an end so quickly. It felt like it was skating forever to get to the point, and I lost interest very quickly. What are we seeing here? What is the trend?
Okay, so look, broadly microdramas, and we should probably just explain what we're defining as a microdrama, because the idea of short form video, which is serialized like what we define a microdrama as, has been kind of around since the beginning. So, I mean, back in the days like pre TV with movie serials, we used to go to the cinema. Well, not us, obviously, we're very young, strapping young men, but generations prior would go to the cinema and they would watch these, usually about 15-minute long serials, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a bit shorter. And of course, that gave way to serialized TV, and a TV drama sometimes could run about 20 to 25 minutes. So it's not like we're necessarily sort of this belief that short form hasn't always existed. But in the day and age of the mobile phone, we've got this thing of the microdrama, which the way that they define it is that it's a video that's been filmed for consumption on your mobile phone in the vertical form. It'll run maybe about 2 minutes, sometimes a little bit less even, and it will end on some sort of a cliffhanger with the idea that you will want to watch the next thing. But the micro dramas aren't just like watching a short form narrative on, say, YouTube, for example. To be properly defined as a micro drama in the way we're talking about it, it requires a financial transaction at the end, at which point you are paying maybe $1.99 to watch the next installment.
So I wasn't watching a micro drama,
Well,
even though
maybe.
it had everything except the subscription.
Look, maybe you were. So the sort of caveat with what I just said then was that in the last couple of years, there's been a massive talk about the amount of interest that supposedly exists with audiences about microdramas. And some platforms like TikTok have actually spent a bit of money, not a lot of money, but a little bit of money to try to lure the microdrama audience to the
Gotcha.
platform. And so there are quite a number of free microdramas that exist out in the market. But by and large, as people are chasing the gold rush, to get into the microdrama market, they're very much with the idea that they're going to be on one of these platforms where they can charge a few bucks for every installment.
Well, this comes at a time when Instagram are talking about going widescreen. And I've got to be honest, any clips I upload at the moment don't seem to suffer if they're in widescreen. I used to change things from this show and McKnight Tonight to be vertical. It doesn't seem to matter as far as view count anymore.
Well, this is the other thing that kind of bothers me a little bit with this narrative that microdramas are the future of the way that people are consuming video, which is that if you start looking at if you think about the narrative of the microdrama, that's what about, oh, well, this is obviously the way that people are consuming content on their phones. But when you actually look at the industry and where the money is with the big platforms that everyone is actually using, it's very much about that connected TV experience. We saw news in this last week and a half that Instagram are launching their Instagram platform on a lot of connected TVs. I think the deal was with Samsung, which is going to take that wide. The reason why we've been talking about so much about YouTube in the last couple of years has been because of the success that they've had connecting to the connected TV. It's about finding older audiences, okay, and really sort of broadening the scope of who an audience for YouTube has been. We're about to see the same thing with Instagram. And then we also think about the other narratives that sort of exist that sort of conflict with this idea of microdramas, which is we're in a cost of living crisis. Like globally, people are really sort of counting their money more than they have in the last sort of 10, 15 years. And the idea that the big momentum in online narrative video is suddenly through these things that you have to pay a few bucks to watch a minute and a half of footage, like that doesn't really like pass the pub test as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you noted in your article some companies are getting out, with Pocket FM CEO Rowan Nyack saying, "We don't think the current microdrama model works. The hardest part wasn't getting people to try the product, it was getting them to come back. User acquisition isn't the challenge in microdrama today, long-term retention is. Much of the category today is being supported by aggressive user acquisition budgets, dark patterns, and auto-renewal mechanics. That's not a game we are interested in playing. If your business only works because cancelling is intentionally difficult, you don't have a product market fit. You are marketing arbitrage platform." Now, Dan, that last line nails it for me, where he's essentially saying, if your business only works because cancelling is intentionally difficult, then you don't have a good business.
Well, this is the thing. So, Pocket FM, they are a company which are predominantly an audio business. I think they're based out of India, but have a fairly large global footprint. They're not one of the big players sort of in Western markets, but they were looking at this opportunity with microdramas because everyone's talking about the money that could be made there. This guy, Rohan Nayak, he's looked at this. They've spent about 6 months playing around in this space and are pulling out of it because they just sort of realized that they are more or less playing in a space where they're surrounded by grifters. Like the way that I don't have the dollar figure in front of me, it's a couple of $billion they're sort of generating in revenue through microdramas across the Asian markets. It doesn't really play well in Western markets. But the reason that suddenly it's just seen as like maybe the not worth their time is because it's just a bit sort of low rent and really detracts from a company which is trying to go public at the moment and trying to look like it's a company that has a lot of growth to its potential. But these other companies are kind of just there to make a quick buck because they're locking people into these complicated contracts where people can't necessarily exit out of them as quickly as they'd like. And so it's a sham. It's kind of a script. And what I couldn't understand about the microdrama story was why is it that they're making so much money across Asia, but you're not getting that penetration in Western markets? And the reason why people like Rohan are looking at getting out of that market is because in order for you to actually make a lot of money in the microdrama grift, what you need to do is spend a huge amount on marketing in order to actually get people to take up the videos, but then you sort of have them trapped in there once you've got them. I read something where they were spending about $1 million a day to market these platforms and their channels. Like, that's not sustainable. And this is why we're not seeing in the Western market, because they're not spending that money on the acquisition.
Before I let you go, people in the media still think that when you do a podcast, it needs to be under 20 minutes, that you need to do vertical, all this kind of stuff. Would you agree those days are over, and that people on their phones now with unlimited data plans, they're now open, and connected TVs, they're now open to watching longer form content? You know, I see video podcasts, Joe Rogan, YouTube says video podcasting is one of its biggest businesses, and people don't seem to mind long form content anymore.
I don't think they ever have minded, really. The thing that's been
But
holding
that wasn't
them
the
back
perception.
is, well, I think there's the two types of perception here. I think there's the perception of the people that are actually watching the content, and then there's the perception of those that are in the business of maintaining the status quo and the lessons that they've learned over the years. But what I think that people are really learning from digital consumption, and Joe Rogan's that perfect example. It's not like Joe Rogan's just started doing this 3-hour podcast now. He's been doing this for, 10 odd years, if not longer.
Yes.
People are only just catching up to the fact that people have been willing to watch this the entire time because they're not watching it in the way that people have traditionally watched TV. Or maybe they actually are, because the dirty secret about the way that a lot of people have watched TV is they're not really ever actually watching what's on TV. They're watching the TV while they've also got a magazine in their hands, back in the olden days. A magazine in their hands these days, they're second screening with a phone or a tablet. They're talking to their family. They're chasing their kid around the house. Like, people aren't actually actively involved in their screen in the way that it has. And nothing's changed with the current mode of what we're watching. It's just the distribution's different. People are watching Joe Rogan for 3 hours because they're not necessarily paying attention to every word that he says. It's playing in the background while they're there working, while they're doing workouts. Like, there's all sorts of things that people are doing while listening to Joe Rogan. It's not actively paying attention to every wise word that he may have to say.
Dan, I cannot tell you the arguments I've had with experts in the industry who cut programs down to 20 minutes for YouTube, and I'm like, you're completely missing the point. Hey, Dan, I always appreciate your insights. Don't forget, you can get Dan's thoughts daily on the Always Be Watching newsletter. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on Media McKnight.
Thanks, Rob.
Before we finish up, a question I received via email that I thought would interest people who watch this show, so I figured I'd answer it here. Lee wrote to me, "G'day, love your segment. I find it really interesting. Every time I see Albanese or Chalmers, I turn the channel immediately and don't go back until it's safe to do so. Can you tell in the ratings, or it doesn't work that way? I'm dying to know." Yes, you can tell. TV has a thing called minute-by-minute ratings, which allows executives to literally see what's happening minute by minute. You can tell if you get a dip. So if Albanese comes on and you get a dip, you know that's a turnoff. In fact, when A Current Affair, remember when it used to interview politicians at the start of every show? And then they watched the minute by minutes and realized that politicians don't rate. And A Current Affair doesn't do that anymore. With morning shows, you take the balance between trying to make a news headline and become a clippable object and a news-making object. So you might have the PM on or Chalmers, even though they might follow what you're saying, Lee, and have drops in ratings. But to be honest, you can get really into the weeds with that. You can see where they're going, where they're switching to, where they're coming from, but it can do your head in at times. You look for overall trends, not specifically one day. But hey, if you've got a question, send it to rob@tvblackbox.com.au and I'll do my best to answer them. That brings us to the end of this edition of Media McKnight. I'll be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. But don't forget, paid members get early access as soon as the episode is ready. It's uploaded, and those paid members at youtube.com/@McKnight, they get it. So hopefully I'll see you bright and early next week. Otherwise, I'll see you at 8 p.m. Cheers.